Okay, so I'm at the bus stop, so this may not really be all that hearable. And also, my throat's been getting kind of dry, or my mouth or something, but anywho, I've been planning on making my last couple videos before my grand disappearance. And this is the part 3 to, what is it titled? Why mental illness isn't caused by demons. And if anybody isn't clear on the point already, the point is that it's not caused by demons because it's not real. It's typically just used as an insult by abusers and by people when you're just telling them things that they don't want to hear. And especially in like America, due to the mental illness obsession, whenever you're telling people, especially house niggers or white supremacists, things that they don't want to hear, then they're just going to tell you that you're autistic or schizophrenic and other made up bull crap. And one of the things especially that I notice with white people is that, well, I don't even know where to start actually, because I'm trying to figure out how to like summarize all of this. And plus I don't really remember a lot of my life, like everything becomes repressed memory right after, so like I can't even really remember yesterday. But I think maybe I should start with this one thing, going back to the evidence channels, and it's that as I mentioned before, I started the evidence channels because, to make a long story short, in the early parts of my situation, I couldn't accept the fact that there is no help and you have to save yourself. And then once I moved with my mom at age 12 and the cash for kids system, munch house and stuff started, I was still under the impression that I had to prove I was sane to get quote-unquote help to get out. And luckily, once I got further into the evidence channels and somebody advised me to get in Reddit groups, and the Reddit groups are decent enough to help me with like finding people in the same or who have been in the same situations and break free from my gaslighting, I realized even more that the situation was really common. Now, of course, I already knew that my situation was common enough, because whenever you're in the cash for kids system, there's hundreds of other people in there being abused and tortured and stuff with you. And yeah, so there's that. But I learned even more like how common it was. And I had this one dude tell me, you need to focus more on getting out than proving you're sane. And this was in like the early evidence channels, probably even still during the part 1 channel. And I remember thinking, but I thought to get out I had to prove I was sane. But the more I stopped lying to myself and broke free from the gaslight and cognitive dissonance, the more I realized nobody actually cared or believed anything my abuser said. And as far as the medical professionals, which realistically, I can't even say there were really that many quote-unquote medical professionals that involved. But I mean, the cash for kids system staff are still the cash for kids system staff. And whether they're really a doctor or not, they're still throwing out the label. So I'll just say cash for kids system staff. They get paid to help your abusers abuse you, and their job is also to abuse you too. And it's not that anybody actually believes your abusers, it's that they really believe that you're lying about your abuse because you're retarded or crazy or something. People actually pretend to not believe you as an excuse to not help you because they actually don't care. And most of the people that you're going to, such as mandated reporters, are cash for kids system staff. They are sadistic abusers themselves. Their job is to abuse you. That's what the systems and the labels are made for, actually. And so, once I realized that, for one, these systems are Munchausen. I also eventually realized that actually you have to save yourself, and I had to run away and all that. Also, that you don't get out at 18. A lot of people under this impression that like at 18 they will get out. That's not very likely. And then it's something else that I can't remember. Did I already say that they are Munchausen themselves and that they're made to create an issue that isn't there? Because if not, there's also that. But there's something else I'm missing. Oh yeah, I remember now. So the other thing, in the beginning, I was saying the mental health system. But the more research I did, the more I looked at other people's situations around me, the more I looked at the different branches, I already knew a lot about SRA, but the more I researched SRA and I found out about the term Ramco, I realized that it wasn't even really a quote-unquote mental health system. Although, I mean, that's a part of it, but it's deeper than even that. And so I started calling it the Cash for Kids system, and more recently the human cash cow systems as well. And then another thing was that there was something else I was supposed to say, but I don't remember what it was. But another thing that I could think of, like even going back to some of the screenshots. Now, the specific screenshot that I have in there, by 2023, I already knew that like Munchausen wasn't even really the issue, but in the earlier parts of my abuse, like maybe like 2021, I guess I could say, I was still thinking Munchausen by proxy, and I had other people in the quote-unquote mandated reporters that of course don't give a crap because their job is to help abuse you, tell me Munchausen by proxy. I even still have a comment that I'll edit in if I remember, from one person telling me that I'm literally Gypsy Rose Blanchard. But the thing is, everybody in these systems is Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And I really believe that the Gypsy Rose Blanchard thing is, I think she's an industry plant anyways, which I already have a video about that. But it's not even about your abusers like a guardian or parent or something doing quote-unquote Munchausen by proxy. These systems are doing exactly what they were made to do. Torture you, unalive you, drive you crazy, traffic you, make up these different labels to throw on you. And then, if they don't unalive you or drive you insane, well, no, they're going to drive you insane regardless. But they also want to convince you that you have a problem that you don't actually have. And I know, like, in the past, I would often mention some study that showed that people actually get worse after they get whatever bullcrap mental label thrown on them. And that's because one of the things with mental labels is that they're there to, one, give you a victim complex and make you feel like nothing's ever your fault. And then anytime you do anything to anybody, you can just say, oh, I just did this because I'm bipolar or something like that. Even though there's no test for any of this stuff, and you're probably not quote-unquote bipolar anyways, but if you really are showing like a lot of mood swing symptoms, you may have BPD, which is from trauma like all this stuff is, or you have type 1 diabetes or some other form of diabetes, which you'll most likely never get diagnosed with. But anywho, the other thing. That was the other thing. Oh yeah, then the other thing. The label is also typically to make the people around you the victim. So you're the scapegoat, you're the quote-unquote retarded scapegoat, and everything's your fault. And you've caused all the issues in the family since 1802 because you're retarded. And your mom can't get a job because you're retarded. Your mom's boyfriend keeps getting fired because you're retarded. Your siblings are failing in school because you're retarded. What else? Your uncle's secretly your grandpa because you're schizophrenic. Your dad's secretly on the down low because you're you have OCD, stuff like that. That's what the labels are for. They either make you the victim or they make the people around you the victim. Typically the second thing. And then also the labeling is very fluid. Now I don't remember all of them, but I know in my early evidence videos I would often mention the fact that I got over 20 plus labels, and I don't remember even half of those. But I'm trying to think. I know that like the narrative mainly was people trying to convince me that I was either retarded or that I was a dangerous black person because I was smart. Which that also goes into something that I've only really mentioned on, I think, the Anointed, Prophetic, Autistic, can't remember the rest of the title playlist, but I mentioned the whole thing with the quote-unquote you act white. Or more specifically, you act like a white boy thing. Wait a minute, melanated people, especially with quote-unquote black people and Mexicans, what people used to tell you was acting white or acting like a white boy would now get you labeled off as autistic. Hopefully that came out right. But you like quote-unquote nerdy stuff. You like quote-unquote quirky stuff, or you're quote-unquote quirky, whatever in the world, however that saying goes. You like, I don't know, Harry Potter, or the Narnia, whatever the heck, whatever that was called. My sister liked that stuff. My older enabler sister. All that stuff these days, if you like those things and you're dark skinned, will get you labeled off as autistic because you're quote-unquote acting white and you like to read and stuff. And it's kind of funny though, because one of the things, as I mentioned in the Autistic Anointed Prophetic Whatever in the World playlist, I mentioned that looking back, especially in recent times, all of my abusers that took like the most parts in my different abuse situations would actually be able to get the autism label themselves for different reasons. I mentioned how like my parents, when they were in school, a little bit of school they got to go to, they made good grades and stuff, and if you made good grades as a quote-unquote black person, that would get you the autism label these days. I mentioned how my sister liked Harry Potter, all my siblings like video games, she liked that Narnia stuff, whatever that was about. They liked Sims, it was something else, but all of those things would get you labeled off as autistic as a quote-unquote black person or a person of true Yashiro these days. Going back to the whole the labels are fluid thing. So one day you can have OCD, quote-unquote, the next day you could have ODD. Like I mentioned with that whole thing where sometimes if my mom's boyfriend was mad that I wouldn't give him any money, I'd have ODD. Because I was obsessively, defiantly not giving him my purse so I could give him money. In fact, no, actually that reminds me of something. I remember I had this whole playlist from sometime in December, maybe December 2023, where this whole thing went down, where my mom and her boyfriend got mad because I wouldn't give her boyfriend money because he went through my purse. No, he went through me and my sister's room looking for my purse, and then he went through my purse and he found out that I had money. And then not only did they say I had ODD, but even though I really wasn't allowed to go to school and hadn't been in however long, him and my mom threatened to tell the school that I wanted to I can't say that actually, I wanted to SHLOT the school up if I didn't give him money. And they were planning on like trying to get me locked up and everything over, I don't even think I had $100, but that's what that reminds me of. In fact, I think I remember the date for that. 12/12/2023, if I'm remembering right. No, actually it couldn't have been 12/12/2023 because the defects thing was 12/30, no, hold up. I sometimes remember the dates now. I used to remember them by heart back when I was still doing the evidence videos. 12/13, hold up. I think 12/17/2022 was when someone who's seen the evidence videos and was in the support groups had made CPS report on my behalf for me to do my last attempt, quote unquote, before escaping my abuse situation myself. And then 12/22/22, that's when CPS has snitched about the videos. By 12/23/22, my older enabler sister, my mom's boyfriend, and my mom had found a way to get into my phone and delete some of the evidence videos from the Part 1 channel to Part 3. And I don't have the GUN school situation videos anymore, so that means that it had to have been in 2022 actually, because I believe it was on the Part 3 channel, because I still had the Part 4 channel on up. So yeah, actually no, it was 12/22, I think. No, that wouldn't even, no, actually, no, it's in 2021. There we go. Yeah, now it's making sense. Because, it was in December 2021. because I was like, that wouldn't add up either. But that was one funny situation. And that's also why I mentioned, to these people that pretend not to believe you because they really don't care anyways, that just go along with this stuff. And I mean even the ones that like don't really get anything out of your abuse, like the ones that are more so flying monkeys, and well, flying monkeys don't get anything out of it. I was gonna say maybe enablers, but neither one of them really get much out of it. So yeah, the flying monkeys and stuff, like, they can help put you in a lot of danger, because it's like that situation with the whole SHOT, the school thing, over probably $50, stuff like that can put you in a lot of danger. And then another thing I could throw in, people with these labels who accept these labels because maybe they just have a safe family system and like they don't have to worry about the quote-unquote autism label being used against them in any form or fashion. They don't care, and they don't understand why people don't want to have labels on them saying that they're retarded and stuff. But as somebody who has had the quote-unquote retarded special needs labels, and my brother, since they had the bad black boy ADHD labels off and on, and I've even known other people with them, like, I don't really understand why, even if you did have like a safe family system, why you would want these types of labels. But I do understand that, especially these days with the new influx of people running and getting the autism label and neurodivergent labels, I could understand, well, I mean, I guess I could say I could understand why they may want to like label themselves, because they feel like they need an excuse for why they're different. They feel like they need an excuse for why they don't fit in. And like, for example, I saw a video of a lady talking about how she just wasn't good with social interactions. And none of my relatives are. My younger sister, that was at one point the golden child, she was really good at making friends, but like the more we moved around too much, and the worse the abuse got and stuff like that, the less she really cared about the friends stuff, because she also lost a lot of friends over us having to move so much, and also over I don't know why her and my brother would do it, but like they would bring people over to the house to get abused and starved with us. Like I remember this one boy specifically that I used to have a lot of videos of, and probably still do have some, and I was always like, why do you guys keep inviting this boy over here to get abused and starved and beat on? But it's like, if you're willing to go through that though, your situation must be similar, or you're really neglected, or your parents work too much and you want a friend too bad. But anywho, to get back to the point, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I seen a video of this lady talking about she didn't have good social skills and how she never understood why, and then eventually she found out about autism and something about self-diagnosing, and what else was it, going and getting the diagnosis late in life, and people talk about the imposter syndrome with it and how they often feel like they don't really have it. But it's like, honestly, feeling like you need to put a label on yourself and run around saying you're quote-unquote retarded, because even though people may like not use those terms anymore, the doctors still do feel like you're just quote-unquote retarded and crazy. And I was never not reminded of that, unless I was in a point in time in my situation where I wasn't the quote-unquote retarded person, I was a dangerous smart person, because it would go back and forth. But you shouldn't really feel like you owe somebody an excuse to be who you are, and you shouldn't have to feel like how you are is like an issue or like a disorder or a label or something. And it's kind of interesting because, like, one, just like with all these labels, autism is millions of different things. And it's like one person can be diagnosed with autism for a racial label, another person can get diagnosed with it for something else, and another person, in fact, no, a better example, if you can read these days in a country where the school system is really bad and a lot of people can't read, now these days you're autistic with hyperlexia. But also, if you can't read at all, you may get diagnosed with autism because you can't read. So if you can or you can't read, you have autism, which is really interesting. And then another thing that I noticed, so I remember that especially when I was younger, I would always get told that I talk really proper, which goes back to the whole you talk white thing, which really means you have less of a southern accent than some other people around. That's what that really actually means. And I've already talked about how the whole quote-unquote acting white thing can get you diagnosed with autism these days. So, as a part of that, my dad was also always told that he quote-unquote talks white. So is my older enabler sister. But that wasn't really the point I was getting at, though, but I wanted to throw that in. Oh, yeah, so I still have some videos about this. I remember, like, the early part of my situation in my first placement. The first time I was locked up, this one nurse who had a daughter that was very traumatized and acted like Danielle Bregoli before anybody even knew who Danielle Bregoli was, which she's a serpent seed industry plant, of course. This nurse, no, I'm screwing the story up. This one girl who was in there, she had asked me if this was my real voice. And I was like, well, dang. And then one of the nurses was like, no, it's not her real voice. She's faking it for attention to pretend that she's crazy so she can scare her mom. Because that was the narrative that the nurses had about me, that I was like, quote unquote, faking crazy to scare my mom and I needed to stop playing and scaring her. Which I'm still so confused about that. But at the end of the day, you're their paycheck and they're always going to find different ways to manipulate you and blame you and make you feel like it's your fault that this is all happening. But anyways, like, I still don't really know what to say about that, but it's like, shoot, this will really leave you like picking up your self-esteem off the ground. And that's something that I mention pretty often in the Anointed Autistic Whatever in the World playlist, because I really don't remember what all the title was. But I mention that often because, like, one of the things about these labels and this type of abuse is that the point of it, or one of the points, is to push you into the homeless industrial complex. Now, these systems are going to do that to you for many different reasons. One, you may end up losing vital records. You're going to be extremely traumatized. You're not going to be able to do jack. It's going to smear campaign you and ruin your life and your future. But another thing about it is that they pretty much convince you that you're bad, crazy, slow, retarded, poor, different racial slurs, stuff like that, and that you'll never be able to do anything. They also have you locked up, tortured, and traumatized and isolated so much, you're never able to gain social skills to really be able to do anything and work a job or any of that. And of course, you never get to be in school. Not that that really matters, but one of the things about getting to be in school, aside from the matrix part, is that you get to learn social skills and you get to possibly make friends depending on your traumas and just how you are as a person and whether you really, like, you're going to fit in or not. But typically when you're in these different Ramco systems, you don't get to go to school, or you barely get to go because you're getting trafficked and tortured so much, or you're locked up so much, or whatever. And then, like I mentioned in the Autism Whatever playlist, one of the funny things about always being told that you're retarded, crazy, and slow and all that is that realistically, none of that actually matters, because since you have an abusive family system, you're not going to have anybody to take care of you anyway. So even if you actually were, like, severely disabled, like near the end of my situation, I was always told that I was disabled, handicapped, what was that other term? Special needs? It was something else. But those are the main ones I mentioned. I was told those things a lot, but realistically, none of that matters anyways, because you're going to have to take care of yourself regardless. Nobody's going to save you, and you already should know, unless you have cognitive dissonance, that you don't have parents or any of that stuff, or family. So realistically, even if you were or are disabled, you really want to claim these bullcrap labels, and you believe this stuff, it doesn't matter, because you're going to have to figure something out to take care of yourself with or without your quote-unquote primary disability, because I'm having flashbacks right now of that primary disability thing. Back to the voice thing, though, because there's actually something else I can say about that. So, I remember that sometimes the way I sound would be used to, like, say that I was, like, manic, and they would be like, yeah, you have a weird voice, and we feel like you're trying to not talk ghetto to, like, make yourself look better, to try to keep us from locking you up, and a whole bunch of weird stuff. And like, they would say that I was, like, faking my voice, or I was manic, and I used to sound really whiny. I think I still do, but, like, especially when I look back on the abuse evidence channels, I literally sound like I'm on the verge of tears in literally like every single video. Like, it's actually really crazy looking back. I never laughed. I definitely didn't sound happy. I don't think I sound that happy now. I mean, well, no, I know like the topics I talk about are depressing to people, but actually I could say I totally sound happy compared to like when I was doing the abuse evidence videos. But I sound like I'm about to cry in literally like every video. Like in the part 1 of this I don't know, series, I guess I could say, near the end I have a clip from one of my abuse situations where my mom's boyfriend was mad I wouldn't give him money, and so he said I was schizophrenic, detached from reality, and he was saying it was my fault that he lost his job and some other stuff. So anyways, if I wouldn't have sped that up, it probably would have been really easy to tell that I sound like I'm about to cry. Like, I think I even kind of sound like a lot younger than I actually am in those videos, simply because I literally just sound like a whiny baby who's like always on the verge of tears. And like even my older scapegoat sister, who they drove insane in recent years, she's one of those people that sounds like she's always on the verge of tears. And like even my dad used to mention that. Then another thing with the voice thing, I remember when I was in support groups and I was mentioning the whole autism thing, there's this one point in time where somebody with the autism label who claimed the label and agreed with it, whether self-diagnosed or not, they were like, with all the oversharing and stuff, I would say you're probably autistic, and with how your voice sounds, you definitely have an autistic voice. But then like another person may say that I sound fine, but a lot of people will say that like they can't really tell what I'm saying that often. But it's like a lot of trauma symptoms with that as well, because I have a video that's titled Trauma Talk. I don't really think I described it how I really wanted to, but trauma definitely does affect your speech patterns, and so does the brain damage from all the drugging and just different stuff. And having a list probably doesn't help, but something else with that I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, another thing that reminds me of as well. So back in the day, I used to be in our anti-psychiatry pretty often, showing my abuse evidence videos and sharing the links. I would be there and in I think RCPTSD and somewhere else. And I originally got on, I was in our Raised by Narcissists, but the moderator was a Jezebel, and I talk about, or at least I've talked about before, how I got banned for saying that boys get sexually abused too, because the mods were all feminists, but that's another story. So after that happened, I moved to other groups, and people in our anti-psychiatry would also often talk about how they really don't understand why some people, especially with the autism label, want to claim these labels. It also makes me think about a video I made like over a year ago about people talking about how people are self-diagnosing with autism, and people are saying Gen Z loves to claim mental labels and claiming that they have problems that they don't have, like Tourette's. But the thing is, it's not that people are wanting to claim labels. People are just believing whatever the doctors tell them. None of these things actually have tests. None of them are proven. They're all insults and none of them are real. So realistically, when there's no test for something, really anybody could say that they have it. But it doesn't really matter, because it's not like there's any benefits they could claim or get off of claiming that they have these things. I mean, there are no benefits and quote-unquote help regardless if you go to a doctor or not. So it really doesn't even matter. You don't get anything out of it. It's literally just a way to tell you that you're quote-unquote retarded, pretty much, which can depend. Like that I mentioned in that other video, the boy I met who was being sex trafficked by the U.S. military and some other groups, he got the autism label actually as a baby because he could talk early, and that was used against him among other things. And also he also eventually was put in SPED for a quote-unquote speech impairment. But I mean, in my eyes, no, let me not go into that, because then I'm going to be oversharing probably. And that's another thing as well that I forgot. Oversharing is a symptom of CPTSD, but another thing with abuse evidence videos though is that due to like a lot of things, so like the manipulation stuff I went through, and also me just wanting to get things off my chest, I kind of felt like I had to like tell every detail about everything, because for one, I felt like if I didn't, some things wouldn't make sense. And then two, well, especially with that specific video that person was talking about, with the whole quote-unquote oversharing comment, I kind of like would have to tell the whole story for it to make sense. And it was about covert sexual abuse, and like it wouldn't have really made sense if I wouldn't have like mentioned all the stuff that I did mention. But it's still kind of like, okay, for example, I may have some thumbnails of like messages from people mentioning this thing about my mom, but like kind of like with the defects case, with the thing where she was like, something that you should know is it was kind of funny. She was like, something that you should know is that if there's a defects case / CPS case, they're not just investigating us, the case is also investigating you, which honestly it's not a lie, it's true. But that's why you don't want human trafficking organizations getting involved in your business anyways. But it's like that's like, I feel like a good example of one reason why I would feel like I have to tell so much like extra detail, I guess, or at least I used to have to do that back during the abuse evidence videos, because like I felt like I had to tell my whole side, and also like it was really just a good point in time to get a lot of stuff off my chest that I don't even remember anymore. Like there's so many things that I talked about back then that I don't remember that happened. In fact, in my part 1 for the thumbnail, I used a message from my old abusive friend Addie, who was stalking me off and on every couple of years so she could come harass me and bully me about my abuse situation. In fact, that message from her happened after she somehow found one of my old Instagrams that I don't even use anymore to like harass me about the missing persons report, which funny enough, that missing persons report was from when I tried to sneak to a job interview. And that's when she said, don't you got a mama that beat you, quote unquote beat you, because she was making fun of me because of autism and me supposedly being retarded, the schizophrenia, what else was it, ODD, ADHD, I can't remember the rest of this stuff. But she was making fun of me for being a smear campaign all over the internet. And the funny thing about that is that I actually have forgot about me and my mom's different fights, because she got less into fighting over the years, and she started focusing more on manipulation after a while, which was actually a good thing, because like once I got really sick and dropped down to 80 pounds at 14, I wasn't like in the health to be fighting anybody anyway, so that was a good thing. But like I forgot all about the fights, and Addie decided to throw it back up in my face years later. And it's like, it's sometimes funny the things that people will remember about your abuse that you don't remember. But overall, there was that, and that's why like, oh yeah, and then another thing too. And then if you confront people like that about being mean or whatever, or rude, they'll just say, oh, it's because I'm autistic or something like that. But another reason why I don't believe in that stuff, I know like a lot of people probably consider me rude, but honestly, I feel like in a lot of ways, well, I don't even know how to put it, I don't really care for people's mind games, and I can definitely say that once you start to get to a point where you don't care for like the mind games, you really see people and even yourself and human beings for what they are, you start to care less about like trying to, what's the word, sweet talk and sugarcoat and different things like that for people, especially when people are saying mean things to you, which people feel like they should be able to be mean to you and manipulate you, but then you can't have a response. I'm not for arguing with people though, although some people often feel like I'm trying to argue. But like, I don't really care for any of it anymore. I'd rather Grey Rock or Stonewall though. That's why typically I don't respond to people, even in real life. When people say stuff to me, I just keep walking. It's usually insults anyways, and people telling me different things about how they feel about my situation and who I am and what I have going on in my life, quote unquote my life, which is really typically like assumptions and different little weird stuff, or different things that revolve around issues that quote-unquote white people and quote-unquote black people have around just different mindsets they have about different things due to their trauma-based mind control that they're under. I'm trying to think about what else I could say.